Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Jeff Brohm, the Louisville Cardinals, quietly putting together a phenomenal transfer portal class, and as much national attention goes to the programs like Ole Miss, who are making some flashy gets, you take a look at what Louisville's doing and what they're going to look like in 2024. They're keeping a lot of playmakers who were on this team in 2023, where they won 10 games in Jeff Brohm's first year, but they're also making a lot of upgrades to certain position groups as well in the transfer portal. And you look at Jeff Brohm going into year two with this Louisville program. If you're a Cardinals fan, you're fired up about what this team's going to look like. Now, we've updated a lot of these commitments as they've kind of rolled in. Want to take a bird's eye approach at looking at what Louisville is bringing in, a very complete class, a lot of players, but I also think the thing to keep in mind is the quality of players is awfully high as well for the Cardinals. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And the fellas have had a blast breaking down the transfer portal and all these different roster moves. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. And for Jeff Brohm and this Louisville program, I don't think they're slowing down. So we'll continue to update you guys as the commitments roll in. Appreciate y'all rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content and enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you, give you the T-box here. Jeff Brohm, Louisville, this transfer portal class, how we feeling?
You know, one thing I think before getting too much into the players, I think is worth keeping in mind is Jeff Brohm has now kind of shown the ability to roll in a big transfer portal class, flip a roster, and put that together and make it play really well. And you've seen a lot of coaches try to do this, like revamp roster, play a lot of transfers, and a lot of them have struggled at times. I mean, USC's had their moments revamping a lot of transfers, obviously, and you've seen teams like Ole Miss, though, and Jeff Brohm at Louisville do a really, really good job integrating a big transfer portal class into an already solid roster. And that, to me, is like, if they're going to keep doing this, that's okay. But it is nice to see, I think, that Jeff Brohm's got the ability to do what I think a lot of coaches can, frankly.
I think that's massive. And you talk about evaluating transfer portal classes, and everyone wants to talk about the quantity of players. You focus more on the quality of players and the evaluation that goes into bringing these guys. They're similar to evaluating guys out of high school. It's difficult to evaluate guys in the transfer portal coming from all parts of college football and saying, yeah, those are the guys that are going to make this team better in 2024. And I think Jeff Brohm, going back to last year, did a really good job. Like, you evaluate some of those transfer portal additions. A lot of those guys were impact players for the Cardinals in that 2023 year. So you trust Jeff Brohm in the process. Now, the first position group, and what stands out to me first when you're talking this Louisville transfer portal classes, I mean, it's complete. It's not like centered around one position group. I mean, a lot of parts of this roster is getting better. Now, the one position group that if you're a Louisville fan and saying, hey, where do we need to replace a lot of production? Like, there were a lot of good players in that defensive back room in the secondary that are no longer going to be with this program in 2024. So you look at Jeff Brohm and said, hey, we got to attack the secondary. They go out and land a guy in Jalen Kimber at 2 a.m. last night. That's going to be a massive help. A guy that was a former top 100 national prospect coming out of high school, made stops at Georgia, Florida. The ability and the traits for Jalen Kimber, certainly there. You combine that with a guy like Corey Thornton or Tavon Holloway. You look at this secondary and say, it was good last year. We're trying to kind of keep that trend and keep that momentum heading into 2024.
And that was, I think, one of those huge positions they needed to go land some guys who are very capable of starting now because of exactly what you mentioned. When you're going to lose that many guys in that secondary room, you don't want to have to go run out a bunch of first-year starters, or at least not have first-year starters who didn't really have competition from people who've played. So whatever happens, but you do have probably 2 to 3 guys, especially with Kimber and Lacey, who are or Thornton, I should say, who are very proven starters.
I think Jalen Kimber really excites me. And he was a guy that had struggles at times at Florida. One thing you can't deny is the traits that he has. I mean, there was a reason he was a top 100 national prospect coming out of high school. And I mean, he started 11 games for Florida, faced 35 targets, only gave up 20 receptions, a 57% completion percentage, 4.7 incompletions. The guy that excites me the most in this cornerback room is Corey Thornton, though. When you look at what Corey Thornton did in the Big 12 last year, and he was dynamite. 11 forced incompletions, was faced with 51 targets, only gave up 26 catches, a 50% completion percentage. When Corey Thornton was targeted. You're losing some real playmakers at that cornerback spot. I mean, I think Corey Thornton is a kind of plug-and-play guy that's going to give you all ACC play. And Jalen Kimber, I mean, certainly can do that as well. Now, the next spot that I am really excited with, and this is what most Louisville fans, I think, got to be pumped up about, is what that passing attack is going to look like in 2024. And Jack Plummer, he was a guy that was brought in to kind of bridge the gap, if you know what I mean, right? Jeff Brohm, he's familiar with Jeff Brohm's offense going back to his time at Purdue. Most Louisville fans know that Jack Plummer was not really adding much to this offense. I think, if anything, at times you kind of had to scheme around a guy like Jack Plummer, because there were certain plays in athleticism and the arm talent that just wasn't there. You take a look at Tyler Shuck and some of the wide receivers that they're bringing in. This passing attack, I mean, Louisville had a lot of success with the run game last year. That offensive line was solid. You had a guy like Gerard Jordan, Isaac Garendo, who were running the rock extremely hard. What excites me most about this team heading into 2024 is I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone in terms of what this offense can look like pushing the ball down the field. And a guy like Tyler Shuck, a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks and Lacey, I think are bringing a ton of juice to this passing attack in 2024.
And that's a big thing, is you're so hampered when you can't throw the ball down the field consistently. You're really relying on your quarterback to push it 20, 30 plus yards down the field with really any sort of success. And you talk about that. You're replacing, obviously, what you lose in Jamari Thrash with two guys in the portal who are very, very good. You're going to have a couple of young guys that are already on the roster who I think you'd like to think will take some steps. So you do have an interesting set of wideouts, but you're kind of right. The big thing is that you now have a quarterback who is very, very talented. And if Jeff Brohm can get what he's gotten out of most quarterbacks in his career with, I think he should have a huge year at Louisville. Because
that's what it is. I mean, Tyler Shuck's a guy that you can ask Oregon fans this. You can ask Texas Tech fans his previous stops. He was at Oregon. He was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. Played his first couple years at Oregon, went to Texas Tech. The big bugaboo with Tyler Shuck has not been what he can do on the football field. It's been keeping him healthy. You get Tyler Shuck healthy for all 12 games, this is an offense that takes a step. There's zero doubt in my mind. You have an upgraded quarterback, and yes, you lose a guy like Jamari Thrash, but I mean, I'm extremely excited about what Lacey brings and Ja'Cory Brooks. And you said it, some of the young guys on this roster, the run game is going to be there. I trust that, but I think you're adding a dynamic in the passing attack, which really excites me. That kind of gets me to the next spot where I think Louisville's doing a phenomenal job in. And that's on the offensive line. I mean, you go get a guy like Jonathan Mendoza from Yale, who you have questions about making that jump from the Ivy League to the Power 5 level, 6'9", 310. He certainly has the physical traits to be successful. Here's the guy that I want to focus in on, and that's Monroe Mills coming from Texas Tech. Got to find him, man. This is a big class here. Monroe Mills, 6'6", 315 pounds, coming from Texas Tech. You look at what he did at Texas Tech last year in 500 pass pro snaps, only gave up 15 pressures. It is so hard to find quality starting offensive tackles in the transfer portal. I think Texas Tech, or Louisville, I'm getting all my teams mixed up. Louisville was able to find a guy in Monroe Mills who I think is a plug-and-play guy at that tackle position.
You can talk about another position that, you're probably going to lose a guy or two, but you're kind of adding a guy who frankly, in Monroe Mills, who should probably be a better performer than what they had last year. And they brought solid guys in from the portal last year, but I don't think you had any guys who are proven in the way Monroe Mills was, and especially in terms of being able to pass protect in a year where I think they're going to want to be able to throw it a little bit more effectively and be a little more effective in the pass pro operation.
And a guy like Jonathan Mendoza just excites me. I mean, 6'9", 310 pounds. You might have found a diamond in the rough. I think you know what you're getting with Monroe Mills, a proven starter at the Power 5 level. Again, hard to find. Louisville found one. Jonathan Mendoza, an all-conference guy. And again, not a ton of buzz coming from Yale. You might have found a real stud there. Yeah, Don Chaney in the backfield, who, if you keep him healthy, again, another former guy that was a top 100 prospect coming out of high school and struggled with injuries. What Jeff Brohm is doing is he's finding some guys that were really talented coming out of high school and not necessarily just busts, right? They didn't figure it out at their old school. They're not good football players. More guys that have struggled with either loaded position groups or just kind of banged up. And if you can keep those guys healthy, you might kind of find some playmakers on this offense that are really going to help this team in 2024. Now, the last position group that really excites me, is you already have a guy like Ashton Gelati returning, who I think is one of the better edge rushers, one of the better pure defensive linemen in the ACC and in the country. You add a guy like Thor Griffith from Harvard. You add a guy like John Garrard from FIU. One of the most, I think, under the radar aspects of Louisville was how dominant they were along the line of scrimmage. You saw that in the bowl game. The bowl game was not a problem up front. The bowl game was in the back end. But you look at throughout the season, right? Phenomenal against Florida State. Obviously, just couldn't muster up enough points. You go back to that Notre Dame game, absolutely took it to a Notre Dame offensive line that was regarded as one of the better units in the country. This Louisville defense was elite, and it started up front, and I think it gets better heading into that 2024 season with the guys returning and then the guys that you're bringing in on that defensive line.
Frankly, you look at who they bring in, it's guys who fit kind of what they want to do, yes. A little bit more athletic, a little bit more want to get in the backfield and be penetrators, be not kind of your traditional defensive line that some teams like to roll with, which is like, okay, you run the system you run. But I do think Louisville does go get guys who are very much fit exactly what they want to do. I mean, you look at what they did last year. Their defensive linemen, they play a very active game.
Disruptors. They get in the backfield.
And you need to be really deep when you count on your defensive linemen to do that. So you bring in two new guys who I just think should be able to keep the train rolling, add some depth, play a very similar game, and kind of make that unit be better than it was last year, given us, especially with what you're returning, and you hope you get some progression from those guys. So that unit, again, big part of why they were so successful last year, should be better this year, I think.
All right, last to close us out with the transfer portal haul. And this is kind of what I mean with why I'm so impressed with what Louisville's doing is they're bringing in a ton of guys at a laundry list of positions that are just going to help this team kind of reach that next level in 2024. You look at one of the biggest focal points of struggle for Louisville last year, red zone scoring. They were 103rd in red zone scoring last year. What is one of the best things you can do to help your red zone offense? Get some big bodies in that pass catcher room. Now, we talked about Tyler Shuck. We talked about Ja'Cory Brooks and Lacey coming over at that quarterback and wide receiver position. They landed two tight ends that fire me up, right? Mark Redmond coming from San Diego State. What I'm keeping an eye on here is Tanner Kozioil. I think I got that name right. 6'7", 240 pounds, 2 seasons at the FCS level. This is a guy, or a MAC level, excuse me, that he caught for 10 touchdown passes. And you look at Louisville and trying to close that gap, right? They're there. They almost won an ACC title. They were kind of being talked about as potentially making a push to the college football playoffs. And now with the expanded to 12 teams, you're looking for that 1%. That 1% could come in the red zone, right? It's nice to be able to move the football between the 20s. When you get inside that 20, you are not going to make the college football playoffs kicking field goals. You're just not. And so what Louisville does is they go out, get two difference makers at the tight end position that I think will allow them to be a little bit more successful in the red zone. And if you increase what Louisville can do in the red zone, I think that's where you're quietly going to see a massive step from this team in 2024 on offense.
And frankly, I think if you look at, again, and I've mentioned this in past Louisville videos, the amount Jeff Brohm has used tight ends in his past life, especially at Purdue, where he had a bunch of very good players, used them very effectively. They just didn't necessarily have that guy, it didn't feel like last year, that he really wanted to use. And you saw him in that Miami game get that tight end position involved a little more. But I don't think they could consistently do it because they didn't have the horses. Now you look with those two guys you just mentioned coming in, I think that should help. Again, obviously red zone offense, when your tight ends are really good, you can be a hammer in the red zone. But I think just given what Jeff Brohm likes to do in terms of running an offense, I think that should add a ton into what they do just down to down and how dynamic they can be and what improvements they can make.
Well, you want a difference maker. You want more of an athletic tight end here. Isaiah Cummins coming from Kentucky is also that kind of guy. I mean, a phenomenal athlete, not necessarily the red zone target the other two were, but you talk about kind of a guy in space, a Jaheim Bell, like what he did at Florida State. That's what Isaiah Cummins could do. I mean, he's a guy that is really good in space, can make people miss an open field as a load to bring down. There's becoming a lot of toys for this Louisville offense. Jeff Brown's been good with toys. And I think you look at this team in 2024, this is arguably, and we said this in 2023, I think it's certainly more true in 2024. This is probably the most talent that Jeff Brohm has had on the offensive side of the football. You go back to Purdue, he was dealing with not a ton of playmakers, and he kind of made them playmakers. I think now you have playmakers, and I think Jeff Brohm is going to elevate some of these guys. You look at this Louisville team heading into 2024. Yes, they're losing some guys, but they're keeping a lot, and I think they're upgrading in the transfer portal. One of the teams that is certainly on my radar, and again, not getting a ton of the national attention like teams like Ole Miss.
He really doesn't. For like being a first-year head coach to do what he did there, like I feel like people just ignore, oh, Louisville, they were lucky, they were this, they were
They
that.
just went under their radar.
They won 10 games and they were really good all year. I think people got to watch out. I think Louisville can be really, really good. And Jeff Brown's not a talker. He doesn't make a lot of waves. He kind of silently goes about his business, but he goes about his business and he does his thing. So people got to wake up to them.
This is a program. And once Jeff Brohm got the job, we were on here saying like this is a sleeping giant of a program. Like this can be a premier college football program. And I think Jeff Brohm is the guy to get him there. He's slowly and quietly making moves. Watch out for the Louisville Cardinals. Really excited about what they're doing in the transfer portal. Again, we'll keep you guys updated as they continue to make moves. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.